The samurai had a privilege. They could cut down a person without being held guilty. Did you know that? An era when a single phrase, Kirisu Gomen, permission to strike down, could take a life. Why were the samurai feared even across the world? This story unveils the hidden truth of the samurai, buried in the shadows of beautiful Japan. In their time, Japan was ruled by a social hierarchy, and people lived with constant fear. The history of the warrior class appeared as early as the 9th century during the Han period. Under the system known as Shinoko-sho, the samurai stood at the top, ruling Japan in the name of the warrior government. Have you heard the phrase Kirisu Gomen? It was not merely a samurai saying, but a privilege granted to their rank. However, the conditions were extremely strict, bound by rigid rules. It was permitted only when a townsman inflicted an unbearable insult. Honor was heavier than life, and silence was equal to throwing away one's pride. Yet the regulations were meticulous. If one strike killed instantly, it was allowed. But slashing repeatedly or delivering a final blow was never permitted. Without witnesses, justification would not be recognized, and the samurai was branded a criminal the moment he drew his blade. The sword raised to protect honor could just as easily summon death. For the samurai, honor was life itself. But the strike to protect that honor sometimes became the blade that led them to execution. Furthermore, their world was divided by a strict hierarchy. High-ranking and low-ranking samurai, though the same in name, their daily lives were worlds apart. High-ranking samurai worked one day and rested two, living in leisure, devoting time to study and martial training. Their meals included sashimi, vinegared dishes, grilled fish, simmered dishes, and carefully selected ingredients. Meanwhile, low-ranking samurai carried pride but struggled daily to earn enough to feed their families. Their meals were modest rice, miso soup, pickles. Dried fish or hijiki were luxuries. Many lived lives no different from commoners, despite their title. But in food, there was a shared taboo. That was fugu and tuna. The reason is clear. Fugu carried poison, and death by poison was deemed an unworthy end. To die by anything other than one's blade was a shame to a samurai. Tuna was called shibi, which phonetically evoked the characters for Death Day, making it a grim omen. Even the sound of the word was enough to halt their chopsticks. Thus, the samurai had ordinary lives, not always on the battlefield. Yet to the world, Japan's samurai were a fearsome presence. The swords at their waist were feared for their performance, said to surpass even guns. In 1860, during the attack on the French legation in Edo, a samurai severed the right arm of a pistol-bearing opponent with a single stroke. The power of the blade shocked the world. In contrast, the West had the longsword. Knights wielded enormous blades, while samurai carried swords. Debates comparing them continue to this day. If a medieval knight fought a samurai, who would prevail? The knight's supporters argue this. The katana was too specialized for cutting, forged from softer steel that could bend or chip against heavy swords. The longsword could smash armor with crushing blows, had longer reach, and could cut, thrust, and defend in many ways. The katana excelled at cutting, but was less suited for thrusting. Knights also carried shields, which offered a decisive defensive advantage, they claimed. Samurai armor weighed 20 to 25 kilograms. In contrast, knightly armor weighed 6 to 7 kilograms lighter, allowing less fatigue. Thus, victory was obvious, argued the knight's side. But the samurai's advocates countered. Without armor, the samurai's mobility was overwhelming. The katana was forged solely to cut human flesh. Against an unarmored foe, one stroke was enough. Even armored, a skilled strike at the gaps could slice through easily. And samurai did not fear death, even losing an arm. They would fight on until victory. That spirit itself was terrifying. In foreign debates, knights are often judged slightly superior. Yet in truth, it was the spirit of the samurai that was most feared. Even knights trembled at their strength of heart. At its root was seppuku ritual suicide, the resolve to prove oneself with life itself. In the Muromachi period, following one's lord in death became customary, evolving into the practice of seppuku. Later, it became a means to take responsibility for failures or crimes. But its essence was always the same, an act of will, a resolve to express meaning through death. By the Edo period, seppuku had formalities. First, the ichimonji, a single horizontal cut across the abdomen. Then the jumonji, after the horizontal cut, a vertical slash to carve a cross. But few attempted it, for the agony of two cuts was unbearable. At their side stood the kaishakunin, the second. The moment the abdomen was pierced, he struck off the head, easing the suffering. In 1868 came the Sakai incident. 22 French soldiers were slain, and 20 samurai of the Tosa domain were ordered to commit seppuku in retribution. Tragic and horrific, yet at the same time, a display of samurai spirit. Some seized their entrails and held them out. Others hurled their organs, glaring at the French with furious defiance. The scene was drenched in blood and terror, shaking the world. Before the spectacle, French officials turned pale. Soon came the order. Enough. The bloody ritual ended. This event left foreign observers with an indelible image of samurai madness. Why did samurai never carry shields? There are two reasons. First, the belief that attack is the best defense. In Bushido, there was readiness to sacrifice one's life to take down the enemy. This spirit echoed later in the kamikaze. Second, the creed of letting the flesh be cut to sever the bone. The sword required both hands, leaving no room for a shield. Yet they were never defenseless. Armor was solid, and the sword itself could serve defensively. Together, blade and armor formed their shield, sword and spirit. Fearless, always moving forward, certain of victory. That was the true image of the samurai. The samurai, their Bushido spirit lives on even now. To discipline oneself, to honor others, to show compassion, to uphold courtesy. This spirit still breathes in modern Japan and spreads across the world. The story of the samurai will never end. Like an unseen blade, whether you call their spirit the strongest of all is up to you.